'Tis but a scratch.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
I'll have what she's having.
It's pronounced Frankenstein.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Everyone loves a good comedy. Everyone loves to laugh. So why does the comedy film genre seem to be as dead as Del Griffith's wife? There used to be a handful of new comedy blockbusters every year that everyone had to watch and everyone did watch. Anchorman, Superbad, The Hangover, Bridesmaids. But that seems to be happening less and less these days.
Yeah, well, that's just like, your opinion, man.
I feel like I've seen this talking point come up a lot, but I haven't seen a lot of solid answers. So let's investigate.
Won't you tell me, where have all the good times gone? Where have all the good times gone?
The sad truth is that movies today, at least movies made by a major studio, need to go big or go home, literally. If they're not going to be a huge worldwide hit in cinemas, then they get dumped on a streaming service to be viewed at home. And comedies are hard to sell internationally. Whereas a flashy, big-budget action movie about 3 Spider-Men can sell tickets everywhere from Nebraska to Hong Kong, comedy targets a more specific audience. Western audiences will get a kick out of Jason Bateman trying to convey Edward Norton in a game of charades, but it won't really translate to an audience in Taiwan. It's become a lot easier for studios to pump $300 million into one massive blockbuster that's guaranteed to make $1 billion than to make $10-30 million films that might not break even.
Come on. What, dude? What? Last night you got flesh pierced, and tonight we're watching DVDs?
The comedy film market used to be propped up by DVD sales. Something like Anchorman might not make a huge splash at the box office, but the DVDs would fly off the shelves. But DVD sales are practically non-existent now. I still buy DVDs, but me and a handful of other physical media junkies aren't enough to keep a global industry afloat. It's pretty simple. If no one's buying the DVDs of the kinds of movies that rely on DVD sales to turn a profit, then the studios won't bother to make those kinds of movies anymore. It's sad, but it makes financial sense. I often hear people say there hasn't been a great comedy in years, and that's not true. There are still great comedies coming out every year. There are plenty of new movies coming out that are as funny as Anchorman or as funny as Bridesmaids, but they're getting lost in a sea of content. Remember Godzilla Minus One? It was hailed as the greatest Godzilla movie in years, it was an unexpected hit at the box office, it won an Oscar, and millions of people eagerly awaited its streaming release for months. And when it finally arrived on Netflix, it promptly became the #1 movie in the world. But after all those months of anticipation, within 1 week of it arriving on Netflix, it was replaced by Under Paris. Under Paris is okay, but it's got fucking nothing on Godzilla Minus One. But we're so spoiled now that after waiting months to watch Godzilla Minus One, everyone watched it and went, okay, now what? And moved on to the next monster movie that was presented to them. We're overwhelmed by this avalanche of content. We've been trained to treat films as disposable background noise. It's become rare that a film of any kind brings everyone together. We're lucky if we get 2 films a year that really capture the zeitgeist. This year we've had Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine. Last year we had Barbenheimer. The year before that we had Top Gun Maverick and Avatar: The Way of Water. There used to be a huge hit movie about once a month. Now they're biannual. Film just doesn't have the cultural cachet it had 10 or 15 years ago. Audiences have fled to TV and video games and social media. Fewer and fewer people have the inclination or the attention span to sit down and commit 2 whole hours to one thing.
That indescribable feeling we get when the lights begin to dim. I can't describe it.
Another big factor in this discussion is that it seems like there are more shitty films getting made now because today's shitty films are fresher in our minds than that of yesteryear. If we look back on the films of a bygone year, it seems like it was all bangers because we've forgotten about the ones that weren't bangers. It's almost impossible to make a great film, so most films end up being completely forgettable, so we forget about them. And that's always been the case, we only remember the films that hold up. It's easy to look back at the 70s or the 90s as some kind of golden age, but there was plenty of crap getting made back then too. We remember the classics, Airplane, Naked Gun, Young Frankenstein, 9 to 5, but for every one of those great comedies, there were 99 shitty comedies that no one remembers. Take 1984 for example, the year, not the George Orwell novel. Everyone remembers Ghostbusters, Spinal Tap, Beverly Hills Cop, and Police Academy, and Top Secret has earned a much-deserved cult following. But no one remembers Bachelor Party, Finders Keepers, Hot Moves, Meatballs Part 2, Johnny Dangerously, The Buddy System, or Chattanooga Choo Choo. And Revenge of the Nerds, although it was popular at the time, has since become notorious for its use of rape as a punchline. The same thing is happening now, except the market has become even more saturated. Now, for every great comedy, there's like 99,000 shit ones. And the 99,000 shit ones seem to get the bigger marketing push because they have more money behind them. It breaks my heart that an unfunny, uninspired piece of shit like Murder Mystery 2 was probably seen by 100 times more people than something genuinely great like Joyride. And that brings us to the next big problem that's killing the comedy genre: streaming. Streaming has allowed comedy filmmakers to get lazy. In the comedy genre's heyday, directors like Judd Apatow and Adam McKay used to rigorously test screen their movies to make sure all the jokes worked, and cut them down to the tightest possible runtime because they had to get arses in seats. But now, when a director is making a movie for Netflix or Amazon Prime, they don't have to get people out to cinemas to buy a ticket and give the film their full attention. They just need them to stick it on in the background while they're folding laundry or eating lunch. Netflix just needs to rack up minutes watched to boast the appearance of viewership to their shareholders. So their original comedies can be over 2 hours long and have scenes that drag out with lukewarm, lightly edited improv. Red Notice, You People, Senior Year, and A Family Affair are all almost 2 hours long, and the Eurovision movie is over 2 hours long. The Kissing Booth 2 is 131 minutes long. It's the same length as Chinatown and Unforgiven. I actually like Sandy Wexler, the movie where Adam Sandler plays a bumbling talent manager in the 90s, but there's no reason for it to be well over 2 hours long. But just because great comedies that aren't 45 minutes too long are getting harder to find, it doesn't mean they're not there. Unfortunately, you have to dig a bit deeper and wade through a lot of shit to get to them. In order to make the search a little easier, I'm going to recommend some of the best comedies I've seen in the last few years. There's a small handful that actually were hits, like Barbie and Inside Out 2 and Everything Everywhere All at Once. And Borat's subsequent movie film was a huge cultural event at the height of COVID. But there are plenty more that are just as funny as those movies that unfortunately went under the radar.
Mace, listen, it is very important that you keep the safe.
Oh! Ah! There's something on! Don't touch your eyes!
Olivia Wilde's second directorial effort, Don't Worry Darling, is a pretentious pile of dog shit, but her debut feature, Booksmart, is one of the best comedies in recent memory. On the day before their graduation, two straight-laced, straight-A students set out to fit an entire high school career's worth of partying and mayhem into one night. It's a modern take on the John Hughes formula. It's as funny and sweet and earnest and relatable as Hughes' best work, but without the problematicness of the 80s. Caitlin Dever and Beanie Feldstein are fully believable as a pair of lifelong best friends, and they have a really hilarious and endearing dynamic. It's essentially a female version of Superbad. Not only does it have a similar storyline, it also manages the same perfect balance of laugh-out-loud moments and more heartfelt dramatic moments for a rich, well-rounded story.
Honey, you good? Did you get the Coke bags out?
Yeah, but only 7, and I think I put in 8.
Just push, pull, twist it!
It's not a puppet, it's my asshole!
Crazy Rich Asians writer Adele Lim made her directorial debut with Joyride. It was a box office bomb and disappeared into obscurity because it was marketed horribly by Lionsgate, but Joyride is a laugh riot and a bona fide crowd pleaser. If it had been marketed properly, it could have been a comedy blockbuster the size of Bridesmaids or The Hangover. It's about a tightly wound overachiever who's joined by her best friend, her best friend's cousin, and her college roommate when she's sent to China on a business trip. The cast are phenomenal. Ashley Park is a great straight man and voice of reason. Sherry Cola is hilarious as the polar opposite of that. Stephanie Hsu is hilarious as a notorious party girl trying to outrun her past. And Sabrina Wu is a deadpan genius. Joyride is just as raunchy and audacious as you'd expect from Family Guy writers Cherry Chiva Pravadumrong and Teresa Hsiao, but it also has a surprisingly soft center. It has a scene where Stephanie Hsu crams balloons full of cocaine into every orifice of her body, and it has a scene with a devil tattoo in the most NSFW place imaginable, but it also has plenty of scenes that tug on the heartstrings.
So he was attacking you as like self-defense.
Technically.
Technically what? What was he doing?
He was either passed out or asleep.
And you killed him?
Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
Loosely based on a crazy true story, Richard Linklater's Hitman is an ingenious satirical blend of subversive crime thriller and steamy romantic comedy. It might have been a modest box office hit if it wasn't snatched up by Netflix for a streaming release. Glenn Powell stars as an awkward academic who works part-time with the New Orleans police and gets unexpectedly called upon to go undercover as a fake hitman to catch people out. At first, he finds himself strangely liberated. Hiding behind the mask of a cold-blooded killer gives him a confidence he didn't realize he was capable of. But when a real cadaver turns up, he finds himself in way over his head. Powell gives a brilliantly multi-dimensional, not to mention hysterical performance in the lead role, and he shares intoxicating romantic chemistry with Adria Arjona. Hitman is a totally unpredictable ride, a great showcase for Powell's comic abilities, and a sharp deconstruction of the Hollywood killer-for-hire myth.
Mr. Davison, Cassius Green here. Sorry to bother.
Let me give you a tip. You want to make some money here? Use your white voice.
My white voice?
I'm not talking about Will Smith's wife, like this young blood.
Hey, Mr. Kramer. This is Langston from Regal View.
Oh yeah! All right!
Boots Riley's anti-capitalist satire Sorry to Bother You is a movie you won't quickly forget. Lakeith Stanfield stars as a down-on-his-luck telemarketer who gets his foot on the corporate ladder when he starts using his white voice on the phone. Sorry to Bother You has a lot to say about workers' rights, corporate culture, and the class divide, but it's also one of the darkest, craziest, funniest movies you'll ever see. You'll think you know where this film is going. Believe me, you do not.
That is definitely broken.
I bet you I could pop it back in myself.
No, I can't. Wait. I'm going to throw up.
I think Jessica Yu's Quiz Lady was held back by its title, because Quiz Lady makes it sound like a shitty generic streaming comedy, so most people probably skipped right past it as they were browsing their streaming services. But it's actually really, really good. The story revolves around a socially awkward game show enthusiast who reluctantly hits the road with her outgoing sister, so she can appear on her favourite show and win the money she needs to pay off their mum's debt to a local gangster. Awkwafina and Sandra Oh have great chemistry in the lead roles, and the genius of their casting is that they both play against type. Awkwafina plays the straight-laced straight man, and Sandra Oh plays the outrageous, larger-than-life comic personality. Quiz Lady is laugh-out-loud hilarious, and it has a huge heart. It's 1,000,000 times better than that title makes it sound.
Oh my God. Jesus, he's spit roasting himself. Post, Brian! Post! Oh! Asper! Oh!
Kay Cannon's Blockers is another one that I think was held back by a crappy title. It's a reference to cock blocking, but it just sounds like a Tetris knockoff you'd find buried at the bottom of the App Store. On paper, Blockers sounds like a typical chauvinistic, double-standard, lock-up-your-daughters comedy about 3 parents who team up to prevent their daughters from losing their virginity on prom night. But in Cannon's execution, the film acknowledges that double standard, gives the girls plenty of agency, and it's less about cock blocking and more about these 3 single parents embracing each other's friendship.
You think everyone that's bi is experimenting? You have zero gaydar.
Excuse me, kid. I lived through New York in the 80s. My gaydar is strong as a bull.
Emma Seligman's debut movie Shiva Baby introduced the world to a unique comedic voice. Rachel Sennett stars as a college student who supplements her income as a sugar baby. When she attends a shiva with her parents, she's shocked to find that not only is her ex-girlfriend there, her sugar daddy is there with a wife and baby she didn't know about. Shiva Baby masterfully balances the cringe comedy of a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode with the high-wire tension of a Hitchcockian thriller. It perfectly captures the feeling of anxiety and doesn't let up for its entire airtight 78-minute runtime.
Could the ugly, untalented gays please report to the principal's office?
Guess that's you guys.
After Shiva Baby, Emma Seligman reunited with Rachel Sennett for a much broader, wackier comedy with Bottoms. Bottoms is about a pair of teenage lesbian virgins who start a fight club at their school under the guise of female empowerment, but really so they can get into compromising hands-on positions with the cheerleaders they fancy. Rachel Sennett and Io Adebari are a comic pairing for the ages. Adebari is great as the deadpan straight man, and Sennett is great as the unscrupulous devil on her shoulder. This movie is so darkly twisted, batshit bonkers, and shamelessly weird, you'll wonder how they got away with it.
It's one of those infinite time loop situations you might have heard about.
That I might have heard about.
The Groundhog Day time loop premise has been done to death, but Max Barbaco's Palm Springs found a way to put a fresh spin on it. Andy Samberg and Kristen Milioti play 2 strangers who find themselves reliving the same Palm Springs wedding over and over again. Palm Springs is much more than a Groundhog Day ripoff. By sticking both leads in the time loop, it puts more strain on the relationship. Unlike Groundhog Day's Rita, whose memory is erased every day, Palm Springs' central couple remember everything, so there's a lot more conflict. Palm Springs might not be quite as perfect as Groundhog Day, but it's a brand new take on a familiar concept.
Squad, gang, maybe zip it. Could we just get you guys to shoot?
Oh, what a beautiful night.
That's dope.
Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman's Theatre Camp is basically Spinal Tap for theatre kids. It's a mockumentary set at a financially struggling theatre-based summer camp in upstate New York. The movie opens with Amy Sedaris suffering a seizure from the strobe lights in Bye Bye Birdie. It only gets funnier and crazier from there. It's jam-packed with great gags, but it's also oddly heartwarming. You'll laugh a lot, but this community of outsiders coming together to create something beautiful might also bring a tear to your eye.
Everything all right in there?
Trying to have a private moment?
My bad. It's not that private, though.
Rain Allen Miller's debut feature Rye Lane is essentially Before Sunrise in South London. Two strangers who have just been through painful breakups spend a day hanging out and sharing their heartache, and end up falling in love. David Johnson and Vivian O'Para share spectacular chemistry in the lead roles. He's shy and awkward while she's confident and outgoing. They're a perfect match. It's a classic case where you can tell within 5 minutes that these two should be together, but it takes them a little longer to figure it out for themselves. Rye Lane manages the magic trick that makes a rom-com truly great. You fall in love with the characters at the same rate they fall in love with each other.
Did you just fucking shoot me? I can't believe you're making this about you.
Renowned Dutch filmmaker Helena Rain made her English language debut with Bodies, 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 and made her mark instantly. A bunch of friends riding out a hurricane in a lavish mansion start turning on each other when the host of the party gets his throat slit. A hurricane party where the power's out and there's a brutal storm raging outside was a great setting for a murder mystery. It creates a really creepy atmosphere throughout the whole film. The cast are incredible. Amanda Stenberg and Maria Bakalova are great as always, and Rachel Sennett steals the fucking show. On paper, it might sound like a typical horror comedy, but it subverts your expectations beautifully. Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is both a tense whodunit and a spot-on satire of everything wrong with Gen Z, and it builds to an ingenious twist ending.
Remind me later. Okay, yeah, fine, that's fine. Oh, 5 minutes. No! English! What have I done?
If it wasn't sent to Netflix at the height of the pandemic, The Mitchells vs. the Machines could have been a huge box office hit. It's essentially National Lampoon's Vacation meets The Terminator. In an attempt to reconnect with his screen-addicted wife and kids, a well-meaning suburban dad takes his family on a road trip to drop the eldest child off at college. On the way, a tech giant's army of robot butlers turn against their makers and take over the world, and this dysfunctional family becomes humanity's last hope. The Mitchells vs. the Machines reminds me of Pixar's best. It's fun for the whole family, it has plenty of big laughs, but also has some tear-jerking moments. The storytelling is well-paced and deeply emotional, and the payoffs are beautifully cathartic.
I want my body back.
Come and get it.
After turning Groundhog Day into a horror movie and Happy Death Day, Christopher Landon turned Freaky Friday into a horror movie with his tongue-in-cheek slasher spoof Freaky. Katherine Newton plays a nerdy, mild-mannered teenager, and Vince Vaughn plays a notorious local serial killer. When he attacks her with a mystical ancient knife, they magically switch bodies. In most body swap movies, both parties want to get their original bodies back, so they're on the same page trying to reverse the swap. But in Freaky, Vince Vaughn doesn't want his original body back. He finds it's much easier to lure his victims to their deaths in the body of a teenage girl. So there's an extra layer of conflict in Katherine Newton's quest to reverse the body swap. Katherine Newton and Vince Vaughn have a ton of fun playing each other, and Landon wrings every possible gag out of this brilliant premise. The most recent instant classic comedy I've seen is Mike Cheslick's slapstick piece Hundreds of Beavers. Ryland Bricks and Cold Shoes stars as 19th century fur trapper Jean Kayak, who has to go out into the wilderness and kill, you guessed it, hundreds of beavers, in order to win the hand of a local merchant's daughter. The best way to describe Hundreds of Beavers is The Revenant meets Looney Tunes. It's like a live-action cartoon. The animals are played by adults in mascot costumes, and there isn't a single semblance of realism anywhere in the film. Every time you think it can't possibly get any zanier, it finds a way to get even zanier. With a silent protagonist, Hundreds of Beavers is a masterclass in visual storytelling, and with its balls-to-the-wall stunt work, it's a masterclass in physical comedy too. As long as there are filmmakers out there making movies as wildly original, delightfully off-the-wall, and outright hilarious as Hundreds of Beavers, the comedy genre is alive and well. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.